Hello, everyone, and welcome to this recording of the meeting together with Andrew Sharp from Hilti, who was instrumental in okaying the role play scenario. And some of you might have already seen him in the interview that I had about the basic aspects of the Hilti solution that you have to sell as well. So what we're going to do right now is that while a lot of you might not be able to actually visit this webinar at this point in time, we are recording it. So what we would do is that if and when you have questions, just type in the question. So essentially you should see a kind of a conversation ticker out there. If you can click on it, you can just mention, put your name out there, and then what we'll do is that we'll call out your name and you can unmute your mic. So please mute your mic till we call upon you. And then you can ask the question that you had in mind for this particular topic. So without further ado, I see that Colin was the first person who was in the queue, if you can say that. So Colin, if you could unmute yourself and ask any question that you might have.
Yeah, sorry about that. You can skip me for now. I need to grab my notebook. I have a few things written down. You can move on to the next person.
All right, so that'd be great. So essentially, that's great. So Davida, do you have any questions?
There has been, as we've been practicing our role plays, there is some questions on cost, but it seems like we don't need to worry about the cost of the fleet management.
Yeah, correct. So that's a tough one to bring up. So, I mean, our pricing is all listed online, but it's so arbitrary for the purposes of the role play because, who knows what we're selling to our customers, right? Until we're actually in front of them and selling. So, what I think it would be best for the students to hit on is total cost of ownership. So digging deep on what it really costs to own a drill. You don't just buy a drill, you buy the drill. And then the more you use it, it starts to lose productivity. So your workforce becomes slower. As it loses productivity, the tool begins to break. So now we have repair costs. We have downtime on the job site. So we have team members that won't be able to work because their tool is broken. And then ultimately, you've got a replacement cost at the end of the life of that tool. So fleet is a great way where we're probably not going to get into the nitty gritty of the costs, but fleet is a great way that we can absolutely control costs. Everything on a job site is a variable cost. Every single thing is. So if we can go to someone in the organization that is involved with the finances and say, hey, we'd like to move some of your variable costs and make them fixed costs. How would you feel about that? They'd probably be pretty excited. So those are the things that I would hit on when it comes to costs. I think we could probably leave it up to the competitor, the student as well, if they want to come prepared with any type of pricing. But I will instruct the team members at Hilti during the role play to just kind of roll with it, right?
Okay.
And not be particular if they throw out some numbers.
Perfect. And then as a follow-up, of course, we watched the longer video, the half-hour interview, which was a lot of good information.
Good.
Thanks. So, and I understand for broken tools, it's a one-day ship, one-day, one-day repair, and one-day shipping back. But then you had also mentioned for loaner tools, they can overnight a loaner tool. So we're kind of like, what's the difference really?
Yeah, so we do that loaner program for some of our larger tools. So maybe it is one of our large breakers that we have. Where maybe a company only has one of those. And so if a tool breaks on Tuesday morning, we can get them that replacement for Wednesday morning, and then they can use that loaner tool all day Wednesday and until they receive their tool back from the tool repair center on Thursday. So we're essentially giving them a tool to use for 2 days. And you're exactly right. Our tool repair turnaround time is so quick that a lot of customers might say, don't worry about it, we're fine. But there are other ones that are going to say, no, I need a loaner. So.
Okay. And then is it just like last year with On Track, you guys would come out, do the inventory, and they could, and you'll label the tools but I remember on last year on Track, I know this is different,
Yep.
but they could also have those tools, non-Hilti tools, in a part of the On Track, but not for the tool management since it's your Hilti tools. Is that correct?
Correct. This is all our tools. So ideally, what we would go to a customer with is say, all right, we've got a customer that's interested in fleet management. So what we would like to do is go out to that customer and determine, okay, what does a foreman truck look like for you guys? What tools do you have to have on that foreman truck? And then there might be a superintendent truck. And we say, okay, what tools do you have to have on a superintendent truck? And then we look at that and we'd say, okay, based off of what you told us and what tools you guys are using every day, your foreman truck is going to cost you $100 a month, and your superintendent truck is going to cost you $200 a month. But you're going to have all the tools that you told us that you need to complete your work. So we would come out and do what we would call a tool crib analysis and figure out what is the optimal number of tools to make sure that your company is running efficiently. If you run into, or if you go into any of these companies' shops right now, what you're going to see is a large number of tools just sitting on their shelves. And that's not making the company any money. It's costing them money if those aren't being used. So we really go in and figure out, all right, what truly is the optimal amount of tools that you need, and then we go from there. But then with the labeling system for the fleet tools, it simply just prints out a fleet label, and before we ship it to the customer or before we pick it up, we place that labeling on the tool. There's no tracking capability with it. It simply is just an inventory label for the customer that they can put their logo on and truck number 2 or job site number 1. And that's what the labeling system will do there. And of course, if any of the students are feeling real ambitious, we do try and sell fleet and On Track together if we can. But that's a very, very big undertaking.
And I just want to build on that in terms of what Andrew was saying, is that when my understanding from viewpoint of training our students last year was the minimum is fleet management. Mm-hmm. A bonus would be On Track.
Correct.
Because the idea of fleet management, of course, the pricing is going to be different, because the purpose of fleet management is to make sure that with the tools that you have, being as productive as possible.
Yep.
Now, does not mean that On Track is not going to help you be productive, but it's also going to be non-Hilti tools, and also other things where you could track it so that you're talking about the overall productivity, not just linked to Hilti solutions.
Yeah, correct. So we have found companies that if they see the value in fleet, then it's very easy for them to see the value in On Track and vice versa. But for some companies, fleet management is right and On Track isn't. And then for some companies, On Track is right and fleet isn't. So, this is sales, so it all comes down to knowing your customer.
And if I can add to that, that is my understanding. Again, I'm just talking myself from the viewpoint of how we coach our students. Is the purpose of this is, no matter what, is if we can get the customer to buy more of Hilti is great. So you can go fleet management, you can do kind of an audit of a truck. You can point out to where they're not necessarily using the tools of the competition. Mm-hmm. And if you can suggest the customers and then say, you know what, why are you carrying these extra things? And you can actually start eating away into the competitor's share. Mm-hmm. That is a bonus that you have with this, correct? That because
with fleet management,
fleet, because that's what I'm thinking. Because when you go and do an optimal supervisor truck and you find out that there's a lot of tools which are just not getting used, and you could say every tool that is not used is not being properly put to use. That's a cost to you. But if you come and do fleet management, what we'll do is that we'll only suggest the right amount of tools necessary for you to carry.
Yep.
And that's pretty much how I would look at it from the viewpoint of even that audit to help you eventually get the customers to buy more of your kind of solutions and product line. And we're now talking about a more increased share of wallet with that particular thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple things there. One thing is, we're ideally trying to get more Hilti relevant tools onto their trucks. But also at the end of these contracts, so if it's a 3-year, 4-year contract, we go back out to that customer and say, hey, all of the tools that are on truck number 2 are about to expire. So we're going to send over the latest and greatest technology, and we're going to collect the old ones from you. And our customers really like that. So, it locks them into our platform as well. And then it kind of comes with the Keurig example too, right? We're selling the Keurig, but we're also going to get all the stuff that goes into the tool ideally as well. So if someone sees a Hilti drill, they're probably more than likely going to call Hilti to get a drill bit for that drill. So always being in front of the customer, having that brand recognition is another huge positive to this program.
Fantastic.
Great questions.
Yeah, indeed. And I look at the fact that the overnighter, the loaners, is kind of like enterprise rent-a-car, or if you have, let's say, for example, good insurance and your car needs to be serviced,
Yep.
then essentially they give you a loaner car. So is it something very similar to that
Yep,
as well?
absolutely.
So indeed. So, and I guess how many times have you had situations where you think you can overnight a tool, or it has to be fixed, but it takes longer than that? So when that happens, the fact that you can give them a loaner is actually even preventing you from taking the risk of bringing something in and realizing, oh, wait a minute, it's going to take more than one day, and then in the time that takes for you to realize that another day is lost, that's a day of loss in productivity as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I don't have the exact number, but it wouldn't surprise me if our tool repair team does that one-day turnaround within high 90% of the time. They really, really are efficient. So we don't run into that a ton. What would probably be more likely is like a logistical error where UPS loses a package or it gets dropped at the wrong location. So that the loaner tools absolutely is a way to mitigate that.
Good.
Great. This is Davida again. So can you talk a little bit about the theft coverage? Because I understand that you said, if they file a police report and you guys you'll kind of waive the 80% of the remaining contracts. How often does that happen? Because it seems like this would really be kind of cost, inhibitive for Hilti if you have a customer who is constantly having tools walk off.
Yeah, so typically when we get a theft claim, it's not just one or two tools that walk off a job site. Typically it's all of the tools on a given job site get taken off and stolen. So I have a personal example. When I was up in the field in Fort Wayne, one of my customers' job sites, got broken into, and all of their Hilti cordless tools were stolen. And I think it ended up being about $10,000 to $15,000 worth of tools. So a sizable expense. And we covered the 80% that was left on that contract. Hilti ate that cost, and the company covered the remaining 20%. And we got them brand new tools the very next day to continue working on their job. So while that's maybe a good cost to Hilti to take on, the customer loyalty that it gained us by making sure that their job site was productive the very next day, did it go a long way. So I know for a fact that customer has grown over 200% over prior year. They are buying products from Hilti now that they had never in the past, simply because they truly view us as a partner. So I was in the field for a year and a half, and it happened in my territory once. I would say that most account managers at Hilti probably have it happen once every other year, I would say, where a major construction job site is getting broken into and all of the tools are being taken.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Colin, do you have some questions?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot. I'm actually the student coach alongside Davida. I guess one thing for me, I know when we were practicing a little bit over some of the role plays, was looking at those 6 pillars that are on the one handout that I know we have.
Yep.
And then just when we were kind of going through it, how important is it for our students to touch on the value that comes out of all 6 of those, really? Because we were more so focusing on a few when we were doing our role plays.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's what you're going to uncover in the role play, right? So these are the features or the benefits, right? So now we got to tie that to what the customer needs. So, I think a solid game plan would be to go in with a couple of these in mind that they're going to be important. But if I were competing, I would make sure that I would be asking probing questions about all 6 of them. And then whichever one gets the spark in that role play's mind, in the buyer's mind, that's the one that you start digging deeper in. right? So if you have one of the students asking, hey, do you ever have job sites that get broken into? If the buyer goes, no, that never happens to us, well, then maybe you move on, right? And start looking at all-inclusive repairs or whatever it may be. So I think that's on the student to probe and figure out which ones are relevant to the customer.
And I think one of the things which I guess you're also preparing for is that some of your team, or maybe all members of your team, get to the finals, because you never know that in the finals what profile, because that's something that we have actually tried to keep it hidden. So you might not know what profile of the person are you talking to in the final. And it could be that the person that you're talking to might not be interested in all this, might be talking about something else altogether. So having an idea about all of this is going to be very, very critical. So I'm assuming that one of the things, for example, for a foreman or a person out there or the user, is that a loaner tool is fantastic because they can actually start looking at being productive, whereas the concept of fixed monthly costs or all-inclusive repairs, a foreman, depending upon if they say it's critical for them or not, might not care, whereas the finance person or the person who's responsible for the job site might be more interested in that. So essentially what we have is we have 6 different sets of benefits, but depending upon who you're calling upon in the decision-making unit, I know that for the initial role play, it's easy because we've given you who that person is. But it could be that person might, depending upon the kind of questions that you ask, might be giving you out more information that you can actually use to try and justify with that person, because the idea would be that that is a person that might have to go internally and then convince other people as well. That's number one. Number two is that if you progress to the next round, you do not know what profile you're going to get. And being aware of all this, and again asking those questions, would definitely help you to say which benefit to use when, or which combination of benefits to use when. So Andrew, am I right in saying that?
No, absolutely. So you got to know who you're talking to, and that's going to drive a big part of it. So you're exactly right.
Yeah. Good. Colin, hopefully that answers your question, huh?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
No. Do you have any other questions?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. Davida, do you have any questions?
No, I have my answered, so thank you.
Perfect. By the way, for Davida and Colin, while we wait because we do not have a lot of people logged in, was it easy for you to actually take a look at the video that we had prepared together where Andrew was going through some of the notes? So was it useful, helpful in terms of at least understanding the product?
Yeah, I think definitely it helped. And, for the students, as we've been role playing, the ones who have watched it versus haven't, you can definitely tell they're using Andrew's words and, so situations and everything. So yeah, I think if we could have that for every sales competition, it'd be great.
Yeah, that's good, because that's the first time that we tried doing it in this side, because it's a kind of a precursor to the webinar. So we are hoping that the low turnout in this webinar is mostly because people had most of their questions answered from the previous one as well. So I think, again, thank you all. Jess, do you have any questions? Sorry. So if this is Jess, this could be my colleague here, but she might be teaching as well. So Jess, she's up. Yeah.
Hi, Deva. No, I'm good. Thank you for your help.
Yeah, perfect. So Andrew, thank you so much for your time, and I think we are all looking forward to you guys coming out here. And again, for all the participants who see this video, if you could send us the names of all your competitors as well as their resumes by the 21st, that would really help us make sure that we get those resumes sorted out and email them to our sponsors, so that we can save a lot of paper and not just have leave a less kind of have more of a digital footprint rather than a carbon footprint. So that'll be really thankful. So thank you all. Thank you, Andrew, as well. And I will see you guys on the.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.